Okay, now I'm gonna take you around my bike. This is my bike. It is a Yamaha MT-03. It's the 2008 version with the 660 single cylinder engine in it, so it's really nice and torquey. It's very nicely decorated at the moment because it's actually my birthday. So these are all my lovely birthday decorations to make it just as obnoxious as humanly possible. So let's start at the front here. So I have this additional mudguard which does absolutely nothing. It's just cosmetic, but I have extended the actual mudguard with this piece of tire here. The mudguards on these are really short, and it just essentially chucks all of the rocks directly into the bike. So this little bit just keeps the radiator and everything nice and safe and protected. I do collect good luck charms on my bike, so I've got my little gremlin bell and some runes and stuff strewn about that just bring a little bit of extra luck to the bike. Changed out the headlight, so this one is super bright, so that I'm a little bit more visible on the road. On the front, I have a pretty substantial rack under here that holds this bag. And this bag is just full of spares that we hopefully don't have to use or have to get to at all on the trip. So this is luggage strapped and bungeed on here. It's a pain to get it off, but it just sort of sits there, adds a little extra weight to the front of the bike, which balances things a little bit. And then if we do need to get into any of the spares, we can get into them. This is my side stand puck, which just lives on the top of the bike here, and is just a bit of wood with a string wrapped around it. And that is so I can drop it down. Oh, little motorbike. So I can drop it down because my side stand is at a really weird angle on this bike. So we've done a little bit of modifications to the side stand. We've welded an old sprocket on the bottom, which really helps it from sinking. But there are some times where my bike just leans over way too much and it's not stable and it will fall over. So this little bit of wood here is really helpful. I can just chuck it down, gives it an extra inch, and then the string around it so that when I'm sitting on the bike, I can just pull that string and retrieve it and put it back under the bungee there. I have a couple of very bespoke brush guards on the front of my bike, mostly cosmetic, but also just to keep a little bit of the wind and the rain off my hands. This is a lovely little bouquet that someone bought for me on the trip with an air freshener. Delightful. We come around to sort of the front of the bike here. I have a wrist rest, which is super, super important. I struggle because I have such small hands, so my hands are kind of one thing that I'm always battling. And you can see because I run incredibly small grips, these are like motocross grips, the wrist rest is even too small. It won't hold on to it. So I've had to put a little bit of carpet, like rug sticky stuff underneath, and just tape that on so that it won't continually roll all the way around. I also have a Speedo here that works on GPS. This is actually for pedal bikes, but we changed the front sprocket on this bike to make my gears a little bit longer because they were so short. So now the Speedo that's on the actual instrument panel is wrong. So I have to use this so that I actually have accurate speed. And it's helpful because I can change it. You can see it's in kilometers now because we're in Europe. Even if the Speedo was working, I can't really see it. It's a readout down there. And again, because of this rack, it blocks it. So the only thing I can really see is my RPMs, which is all I really need. Again, that's why the speedometer lives over here. I also have a phone case just in case I need to use the sat nav. Here's some more good luck charms. I picked up this lovely lady in the Black Forest who's been keeping me company on the road. This is the standard, oh hello, this is the standard mirror that comes with the bike, which is great because it's really vibration resistant. So as most singles are, this thing vibrates quite significantly, hence the massive wheel bar end weights here. But that one over there is much, much longer. So when we get to the back and look at the luggage, I can't actually see over the top of my luggage. So I've had to extend that mirror, which allows me to see sort of around the bike so that I can see if there's anyone behind me. As Nate mentioned, we always write right on the mirrors so that we go in the correct direction. I also have a little switch meter. I've got my voltmeter and my heated grips. Unlike Nate's fancy Oxford grips, I run pretty crappy Chinese ones, mostly again because of my hand size. My hands are so small, I can't grab those really thick grips. So they don't work as well, but they do take the edge off, especially this time of year up in the alpine passes. I also run a adjustable clutch lever, again because my hands are so small. So this is on the smallest setting. It does absolutely bump into the amazing brush guards, but I don't care. It works and I can handle it just fine. Coming around, I have my tank bag. I monitor all of our distance, so every day I write down how many miles we've done, well, kilometers in this case, to just give us an idea of how we're doing. This tank bag had a huge hole in it, so now it has tape on the hole so nothing gets wet or dewy. Now this bike has a plastic tank, so I've had to modify that to work with this magnetic tank bag because I didn't want to buy that whole setup where you can get it on a plastic tank, whatever. So I've just glued a bunch of wheel weights to the tank. You can see some of them are starting to peel off because it's so hot that the silicone is peeling, but there's plenty on there and it sticks great. It's not going anywhere. So that's what those are for. Before we left, I did change out the spring. So the MT-03 has just a single shock here on the side. And in order to try to lower the bike as much as possible, it's a very tall bike, not easy to lower because of this monoshock and where the airbox is, and it's kind of a nightmare. So I did buy, you can see all the silly string from my birthday design this morning. I did buy a slightly smaller shock to try to get it to compress so it's as low as humanly possible, which allows me to kind of get my feet down. Also helping with that is just the general weight of the bike right now, which is allowing me to get my feet down a little bit more. Still not perfect, but do what you need to do. I have my seat here, which has had some nice road modifications. So this is just the standard Yamaha seat underneath here. A couple of bin bags in the back to make sure that there's no rain getting flung up into the seat and all the electrics. And this has obviously been modified. Oh, we got another truck. So I was getting a pretty sore bum after about 3 days. There were a couple of chairs at the side of the road that I took a Stanley knife to and cut some of the foam out. And then these are just some actual rags from a French campsite. Thank you, French campsite person. And they're just strapped on there. So when it rains, that whole thing goes into a bag and then the luggage strap just keeps it on so I can stand up a little bit while we're riding. Speaking of which, for foot pegs for me, they got changed out for these bear trap pegs, which makes it easier to stand up in the rain so that my feet don't slip off, which is great. These have been fun for this trip. I have a military bag here. This is just some spare luggage straps and locks. We have a helmet sort of chain thing in case we wander away from the bikes, which doesn't happen very often, honestly, but just a couple of spares in here, so don't really use that all that often. Then we come to my pannier setup. So similar to Nate, I have the same kind of panniers. You can see some amazing fixes that have happened. These panniers went down the road a while ago and cracked a little bit. A little bit of hot glue just keeps them from getting any water in. Again, since my bike leans that way, this is the sort of everyday pannier. And I carry all of my food as well as all of our tea making stuff. So we just have a bag here that has, you know, our little shield, some coffee, some tea in there. So all of that can just come out as a bag when we want to make some tea. Speaking of which, I carry the stove. So this bag has our stove in it. It's in a plastic bag just in case it does rain. But our stove and gas bottle is in there. And then for luggage, I carry our 2 chairs. That's a bike. I carry our 2 chairs, and we actually carry 2 tents. Now we use pop-up tents because at the end of a 9 or 10 hour day, the last thing I want to do is bother with pegging a tent and poles and all of that. We have one larger tent that's for the 2 of us that we sleep in, and then we have a really small, I think it's a 2-man pop-up tent for all of our stuff. So our jackets, our boots, our helmets, all these dry bags all go in that stuff tent, which makes sleeping just more comfortable. You don't have to worry about where all your stuff is. We usually bring our tank bags in with us because that's where all of our essentials are, but everything else goes in the stuff tent. Then I have my clothes, about 10 days worth of clothes, one of our sleeping mats, and they are in these dry bags. We used to use garbage bags, but after a few days, they're pretty useless because the wind just tears them apart. So moving to getting some of these dry bags has really improved things and made it go a lot faster and not faffing around with garbage bags all the time. Coming around to the back of my bike, I have this lovely aerial here, which I like to ride with because it flaps in the wind and it's very lovely. I also have, yeah, we don't go that fast. I also have just a high vis that sort of just flaps around. I'm always riding, generally speaking, I ride behind Nate, so Nate's got the lights to be super visible from the front of the bike, and I've got all this stuff back here to be really visible from behind. That includes an updated massive brake light. You can see the original brake light that I usually use is back there, and this one's been tacked on to the bottom of my rack just to give me a lot more visibility from a brakes perspective. I've also got some larger indicators. One's there and one's over there, so hopefully people can see that a little bit better. The ones on the front are much smaller. And then under here, so this is the rack where all that stuff is. You can see again the mud guard is pretty useless. It's just that little bit of stuff up there. So what I've done is taken some siding actually that goes on a lorry, like that really thick rubber, and just laid a layer of that underneath the rack, which really keeps all the dirt and junk from getting chucked up into our tent and onto all of our stuff. When we load the bikes, generally speaking, we use luggage straps. One of the cool modifications that we made to these racks are just screwing in some bolts. You can't really see here, but there's a bolt under there, and it just keeps these luggage straps from sliding around, so you're really able to kind of like tie them in a little bit better, and that's really been a huge help to make sure that everything is nice and tight, doesn't get burned up by my exhaust, and everything kind of stays where it's meant to go with all of those bolts. Let's see, on this side I carry the kettle, and that's my mug. This is just an old like water bottle holder thing. If you had a pedal bike that you put the water bottle in, and it works great to just use some carabiners and clip it on there, and they sort of sway around, but they never really go anywhere. Under here is another military bag. This has a couple of extra cans of gas for our stove, essentially making me a rolling bomb, which is always very confidence inspiring, but that just makes our life easier so we don't have to find a shop if we run out of gas for our stove. Just like Nate, I use a couple of bungees on the top of my luggage. Right now, these are all my waterproofs are in this sort of tank bag cover, so they're easy to get to. And I went swimming this morning. My swimsuit was very wet, so it's just sort of bungeed on there, and will will dry in the wind as we're rolling along. This pannier is the stuff I don't need every day pannier. It's got a couple of books in it. My Crocs. Crocs are a massive lifesaver. After a long day of being in sweaty boots, get into campsite, put Crocs on, let the feet air out. So those are in there. First aid kit, really important. Band-aids, bug spray, sunscreen, all that type of stuff. So I can get in there. Again, this one also went down the road, so it's got some nice glue on it. I can get in there, but most of the time, that one usually doesn't open during the day. Down here, the battery for this bike is normally hidden under the seat, so it's been brought out to the side. So there's this little cage that it's in. That way, if there's any issues with the battery or any problems, it's easy to get to, easy to replace. And, oh, here comes some more bikes. And it also allows for us to put a cable on here, so that means at night we can charge power bricks or run a couple of things that we want to in the evening. In here I have all of the oil for my oiler. I have a Scott oiler attached to my bike, which has been massively misbehaving this trip. So it's now basically a manual oiler, similar to Nate's, where I'm just filling it up with a little bit of oil every morning and letting it drip out. The heat kind of wreaks havoc with these things and the different temperatures and different thicknesses of the oil. So it's been a bit of a jerk this trip, but it's kind of working. As I think other Yamaha owners will know, if you get a dry chain, the gearbox on them really struggles. So it's important for me to keep that chain nice and lubricated. I got a couple of horns here. This is obviously not the standard horn arrangement. I think these are off a BMW or something, but they're really freaking loud, which is great. So you can make sure people hear you as well as see you. And I think that might be it. I don't have stickers very much on my panniers because the material here isn't so sticky. So I have a helmet that looks insane. So there you go. There's my bike. We did Nate's bike. I think we're off again on the road. Bye, guys.